sadly, I think if anything, it's actually probably engaged more people in politics, because I think a lot of the time people don't see politics as relevant to them and don't feel that politicians are talking about issues that relate to their lives. And most people in Glasgow will have heard of Stephen Purcell, and most people will have some idea of what he does, perhaps. So actually it's something that connects people to, oh my goodness, it's something happening in my city about our council leader. I have to say though, I do think that the damage to politics is far more about too much convergence between the major parties like Labour and the Tories on many of the great issues of today, and this kind of cosy cabal being created where when parties converge, you don't get enough debate, you don't get enough difference. I think as the Liberal Democrats we've always tried to bring out different and distinctive politics, and one of the ways you could actually encourage people to get more involved is be clearer and speak to people in their own terms, and of course have a fairer voting system that engages more people in the voting at general elections.
John Mason, you certainly had
despair that family have felt, that even with 3 of them, they couldn't feel the support amongst each other to stop them from throwing themselves off 15 stories. And you just think about it, think how despairing you must feel to take your own life. And I think one of the most depressing things I've seen, and one of the things that gets me so angry over the last, well, many years now, is this hysteria whipped up by the media, and I have to say by both Labour and the Conservatives over many years, about the negative impact of asylum seekers, what characterised as benefit scroungers and things like that. Anyone who knows about the process and the little amount of money that asylum seekers even allowed to get.
Sorry, Katie, benefit scrounging is something completely different.
I know, but I think
benefits have nothing to do with asylum seekers whatsoever.
No, the thing is, in the media, this is whipped up, and it's pandered to, and has been pandered to by both Labour and the Tories, where what is so frustrating is you think how hard it is to even get here. It's virtually impossible to get here as an asylum seeker legally now anyway. So the determination you've shown to get here in the first place, then you're not even allowed to work. I mean, this seems one of the craziest things, that asylum seekers are not allowed to work, so that individuals or ordinary people can think, well, why are they claiming this? Why are they claiming that? Put them to work. But most people don't realise they're not even allowed to work. And being able to work at least would give you some self-esteem, it would give you something to do, it would give you something to take your mind off the years and years of uncertainty and waiting. And when you think about how local people, particularly in Glasgow, and I'm thinking of the Glasgow girls in the north of the city who fought really hard to prevent their friends who they'd gone to school with being sent back, and the whole horror that local people have shown at dawn raids and people being dragged to Dungavel in the middle of the night. It's a horrific and inhumane system, and we really can't treat people like this in this day and age. I think one of the first steps you could make to make things easier would be to allow asylum seekers to work. But equally, I agree with John about we need to speed up the system. We need to take away the inhumanity that has been far too prevalent, and we need to ensure that the system treats people, not just children, but that asylum seekers are vulnerable. We need to treat them humanely as we would want to be treated if we were in that situation. Is we absolutely believe that we should have no tuition fees throughout the whole of the UK. We believe, if we were elected, we would want to abolish tuition fees. We think because of the crisis that we are in, that we cannot do it as quickly as we hoped, but within 6 years, we would have abolished tuition fees for all students in the UK, as we did when we pushed Labour and made sure in the previous administration in Holyrood that Scottish students didn't have to pay tuition fees. And I think that's the biggest contribution that you can make to ensuring that students are not surviving on £3 a week. However, as well as that, and I also would have to say again, may sound a bit like a parrot when I keep saying it, but I do think it's quite disgraceful that both Labour and the Tories have pushed any comments about what they're going to do about this into the excuse of there being a review, which funnily enough is not going to report till after the election on how student funding should be decided in future. So we have made quite clear commitments on that. But equally, we have committed to a minimum income guarantee for students of £7,000. And basically that will be made up, and don't all suddenly think they're going to get £7,000 in their pockets, but it's made up of a mix of bursaries, loans, grants. But we do fundamentally think that you need to set a standard for what students should be able to live on, so that they understand, so that they're not leaving university with masses of debt. We think students are the skilled workforce of the future, and we think that you should not be expecting students at the time when they're in most need and when have very little at way to pay for these huge debts that are getting racked up, and you wait till afterwards. So fundamentally, it's no tuition fees across the whole of the UK and a minimum income guarantee for students of £7,000. Absolutely, we should be lowering the voting age to 16. I think it's all part of creating a fairer politics and about engaging the population, whatever age. And I think you can do an awful lot to engage young people, because in a way you've got school pupils are captive at school. There's an ability for head teachers to say, well, let's hold mock elections, or let's ensure that everyone understands the process. It's much more difficult once you've left school to actually engage people, unless you're doing, what I've been doing over the last 3 years is knocking on thousands of doors and talking to hundreds of voters here, including many students. And I have found many students who aren't registered to vote or didn't realise they were registered to vote. And what's interesting is how many of them, once we started talking about the issues of interest to them, suddenly realised perhaps they did want to vote. But in fact, unless you get politicians out and talking to the public and engaging on the issues that they're concerned about, then whatever age they are, you're not going to encourage people to vote. But I think you could also do things, we've been very clear about this for a long time, is having a fairer voting system where your vote really counts. And an awful lot of people feel, what's the point of voting because it's always been the same, nothing's going to change. Well, in fact, there are plenty of seats where these things could change, even under this unfair voting system. But then you look at the scandal of the MP's expenses as well. That was another reason people got turned off voting, rather than thinking, well, why should we bother because everyone's at it. Now, I think that was harsh on many MPs. However, what some MPs did affected the whole view of people about all MPs. Okay, well, perhaps if you have
the question was about voting.
Yes, so I think fundamentally voting at 16, voting at 16, absolutely you should be able to vote at 16, but you also need politicians to engage with people at all levels to get you to want to vote. Funnily enough, at our Scottish Conference just this weekend, I was proposing a motion to come up with measures to try and prevent the creation of this lost generation, because I think we have a huge concern in Labour Democrats that there is a danger that, as happened under Thatcher, that young people came out of school, college or university, and ended up finding it difficult to get work, and ended up sliding into long periods of unemployment. And that's where the despair and the lessening of your skills all starts to develop. And as a careers advisor for 16 years, I've talked to many young people who, I would say the hardest ones to help were those who came in at 16 and their parents hadn't worked and their grandparents hadn't worked and their friends laughed at them for even wanting to work, and this whole concept that they were striving to overcome was just being denigrated by everybody they knew. And the difficulty is, if you don't give young people hope, then what is there? You've got to have hope so that you can believe that there's a future. And many of we got our motion.
Okay, can I ask you to use brief as
right, okay. So some specific things we're talking about. We want to have an emergency budget in June where we would create a 3.5 billion jobs package, which I'm not going to go into all the detail of it, but fundamentally we have fully costed it. It's about making sure that at the time when the danger of people not being able to find work is at its greatest in this economic recession, we would do as much as we can to generate new jobs where the country needs it.